On that last video about the relation of racism and Kantian metaphysics and Cartesian dualism, there are some things I wanted to, or meant to go on to say, or should have gone on to say at any rate. And instead of taking down and posting a new video, I thought I'd just add a little chapter. All right. So the basic idea of race, white black race, or, white and people of color type of race, is the content of mind body dualism. We are minds and you are bodies. Now, let me add immediately that that's completely fictional. Actually, we're all bodies. I hate to break it to you. All right. Because I'm a materialist. Now, that's a pretty simple claim, insight. The structure of racism reflects the structure of Immanuel Kant's fundamental principles of the metaphysics of morals. Let me try to confirm that and to, give us a bit of a sense of its possible explanatory scope. The stereotypes of black people, or non-Western peoples, but especially black people, by Europeans, are relentlessly physicalizing. And each time they construct a physicalizing stereotype of Africans or African diaspora people, they are saying, the basic thrust is they're saying we are not that. Though we are. Extremely are. So, black people, as portrayed in through the history of stereotyping, are violent. That is, engaged in physical contact, right? Hypersexual. This even makes them a reproductive threat. This is maybe why eugenics emerges after slavery in the United States as a incredibly pervasive and program endorsed by many, many progressives. It's an argument for birth control, abortion rights, and stuff like this. The hypersexuality of black people will make it possible for them to out reproduce us and pollute the blood. Like the Jezebel figure, okay? So, right, okay, or the violence. These are physicalistic, like animalistic qualities. And what I'm saying is that they are attributed by white people to black people as the very essence, the structure of racism, violent crime, okay? And everything that goes with that. All right, so let's think about the sex and violence thing here just for a minute. And the amazing thing about this is that what we are saying about you is what we are. And as we make it true for you, try to make this true in the world, we just become ever more intensely what we claim you are. It's an amazing historical accomplishment. So, take the sexuality thing just for a minute, okay? Now, the sexual exploitation of black women in slavery is one of the signal facts of all American history, okay? It's kind of how we have the racial composition we do. Rape. Having sex with people you own, who you claim to have the right to buy and sell. right? Like considerably worse than prostitution, obviously. The grossest thing you ever heard, all right? Or whatever, okay. And as we rape you, we justify that on the grounds of your animality, your hypersex, which includes your hypersexuality. Yeah, who's the sexually incontinent person when a slave master rapes a enslaved woman, okay, or an enslaved person? Who's the Jezebel man? All right, all right. So in I mean, it's just a perfect sort of mirror image where we claim that you are what we are doing to you. In the case of violence, uh, the picture of black people as pervasively violent, criminal, because unable to control their impulses and beliefs like a good Kantian should, like a white person. All right. Well, that justifies all kinds of breaking slaves. This justifies the mass incarceration. It makes sense of the mass incarceration, this feeling of preternatural criminal threat, violent crime emerging from the ghetto. Physicalized, physicalized, physicalized. The history of mass racial incarceration, central to the history of race in the United States, is comprehensible on these Kantian racist lines. Um, and again, the amazing thing about that is that we're claiming justification for the way we're treating you from your violence and animality. But we are treating you with violence and animality. Like a mass racial incarceration system is violence, dude, on a huge scale. And so we can, as we congratulate ourselves for not being violent like y'all, that's what this whole structure is for. Again, self congratulation. We manufacture the conditions that we condemn. Actually, okay, so this is the other thing about this is that these stereotypes, they claim to be kind of representations of the antecedent reality, the sexuality, the violence, and stuff like this. But they are ignorance. That's also physical, right? I mean, so that's what we're thinking about. Ignorance is animal in this Western structure, starting with Plato. Ignorance is a thing to be avoided most of all, and ignorance is a feature of black people for white people. Now, I mean, this is a beautiful example, I guess. Like slave masters and slavery advocates arguing that black people have no language. Okay, Booker T. Washington said that about Africans. Like when you found us, we had no language. And they cannot, I mean, maybe there should be kind of a monkey see, monkey do reading and writing possibility, like Phyllis Wheatley or something like this, okay? But basically not. Africans are incapable of reading and writing. And then the next step in that is it's a crime to teach them to read and write. Read slave narratives a la Frederick Douglass, okay? It's illegal to teach them to read and write. Illegal. So we made a crime against the impossible. And then, so then after like complete denial of educational opportunities, or later on in Jim Crow segregation, and just separate but totally unequal situations, we try to enforce ignorance upon you, right? So that we can confirm our stereotype of you as ignorant. That's amazing. That's truly outstanding. And again, it all has to do with this sort of philosophical position. Knowledge is here in the mind of white people, in that library over there, in that archive, okay, in our history that we tell ourselves. We are knowledge, you are ignorance. We are mind, you are body. Those are basically equivalent, So the racial imaginary of white people has been this Cartesian Kantian terrain where some people are minds and some people are bodies, this extruded, ejected dualism or asceticism, where it's not that I'm a mind and a body, it's that I'm a mind and you're a body, which is why you have to serve my body. And I think, if we examine the imaginary content of race, we're going to see that it's Kantian deliberators and against beasts. That's the whole content that's basically the content of race in the whole Western history of modernity. And I just think this makes a lot of sense of stuff. And now, we could think about like how much to blame the philosophers that articulated this. I guess, to excuse them to some extent, first of all, they were giving incredibly sophisticated structures of justification for stuff that, in a sense, everyone believed. Like, they didn't make this up, I don't think, that some people are beasts and some people are civilized minds, all right? These were societal attitudes, probably. But they sure helped articulate it and give it legitimacy and make it make sense and yield a vocabulary and help those stereotypes stick for centuries, because they help the self-image of white people. Like I say, all of this stuff is about, like, we are minds, I'm a pure spirit. That's why I'm exploiting you brutally, okay? Like, beyond the sex and violence, just the labor exploitation. And again, that's justified by the fact that these are physical rather than intellectual beings, right? So they should build our buildings, right? They, like, unlike us, they're suited to work 14 hours a day. Do you see what I mean? In a grinding physical situation, all right? And so it's justified by nature, by our nature, as pure minds, which is completely falsified by what we are doing to you every day. All right, so that's the addendum. Race and metaphysics.